How can governments deliver more effectively? What can government executives do to improve agency effectiveness and efficiency? And how can government executives develop a blueprint for improving agency performance? I'll explore these questions and so much more with Richard Spires, former senior government executive and author of the new book, Government Can Deliver, a practitioner's guide to improving agency effectiveness and efficiency. So what prompted you to write this book?
Well, that's a great question. And, I entered the IRS in 2004. And to be honest with you, I still support agencies today as a consultant, and I'm dealing with some of the same issues that I dealt with, almost 20 years ago now, right? And the technology's changed a lot, right? How they deliver has changed a lot to some degree, but the management challenges, the governance challenges, agencies making real progress on their effectiveness and efficiency, there hasn't much changed. And I feel like through myself and what I learned in working for two large agencies, the IRS and DHS, as well as talking to many others about these issues over the years, I just wanted to get my thoughts down on paper so that it could be valuable to someone else. Yeah. And that ended up turning into a book by the time I started thinking about how to structure it and what it would entail. And it was a lot more than just an article.
So you dedicate a chapter, which was very helpful in terms of practical insights it's offered on resiliency and security. Mm-hmm. But I was wondering, given the leadership tenure continuity gap and what you just described, maybe that leads to this, but why do agencies sometimes in government sort of flounder when a crisis comes up? Yeah. What was your perspective on that?
Well, part of it is, to your point, tying the link between the experience of those at the top, right? But I would say there's a couple other things that I've seen where agencies, they claim they worry about resiliency and cybersecurity, but do they really address it in a fulsome way? And I have found typically no. And I think it's really, really important that the governance model you have in place not only address the normal things about, the oversight of where the money, where you're investing your money, the programs, delivering new capabilities, but that same governance, set of bodies needs to look at the resilience, whether it be at an enterprise level for the organization or portfolios, the resilience of a portfolio and striking that right balance. I mean, you need to invest, right, in resilience. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. You need to really call it out, and you need to have the right executives within the organization striking that balance about how much do we invest in new functionality to deliver to the citizen or whatever it is they're doing as an agency, and how much do we need to invest in resiliency and security. There's always a tension there, right? There is always a tension. But I think if you do this right, you can have an informed discussion and decision process about where the right balance is. And I think many government agencies I've seen do not strike the right balance. They are not investing properly in resilience.
That's terrific. And, it leads into my next question. It's getting your perspective, both your time at IRS, your time at DHS, and now in your consulting role. I want to know, what can the federal government do to attract the right people and build that pipeline you talk about in your book for the future, but now?
Yes. Yeah, I still don't get it. I loved my time in government service. I spent 8 years in federal government, and it was the most meaningful work I ever did in my career. And that sense of mission, it's not going to capture everybody, but I just don't think that government agencies play up enough the mission aspect of this and trying to attract. I'll give you a specific example, and it's a vignette in the book, which I thought was a very powerful one. So I got to know the chief counsel, the top attorney at the IRS pretty well. And he and I were talking one day, and he explained to me, he goes, that we attract, if you want to be a tax attorney in this country, there's a couple of different routes, but one of the most popular routes is you come out of a top law school and you come to the IRS. I go, wow, that's something. You can attract the very top talent. If If you want to be a top tax attorney, you come to the IRS, you tend to do 3 or 4 years. I mean, some of them are so captured by the mission, they'll stay for a career, but 90% will not. They'll go on to a lucrative career in the private sector, in major law firms, those kinds of things as a tax attorney. But think of the benefit to the country of that talent pool, right? Not only is it helping the IRS for those 3 or 4 or 5 years the individual is there, but then they're going out into the field, they're representing clients, but they understand how the IRS works, right? They understand how tax attorneys in the IRS do their job. And so what a benefit. I mean, it's kind of an ecosystem, and I think a very positive ecosystem. Why can't we work to replicate that model, right? I mean, I think we should work to replicate that model in many different areas and say, hey, come to the government for the first 4 or 5 years of your career. Get tremendous experience, the scale, some of the complexities of what you're dealing with. Your chance to influence and impact society is so much bigger than in almost anywhere else you can go coming out. And I just don't think we sell that well enough in government. I think we really could. We could have a campaign around how to attract the best and brightest in the government, and we should.
Your last chapter before you get to the transformation plan and some great insights on how to do what you're suggesting is around resiliency or resilience and security. Can you tell us a little bit more why you picked that? And then I'd like to get into some of the key attributes you offer.
Yeah, because when I thought about it, of course, coming from more of an IT background, you immediately think of, just security, cybersecurity, right? But then when I really thought about what are agencies dealing with, it's really a resiliency problem where it's, and I talk about in the chapter that, and the subheading is, a bad day will happen. I mean, I don't care how good you are, bad days are going to happen and things are going to happen. And working on your resiliency, and I talk about 3 real attributes of resiliency being, obviously when you're in the firefight, the bad day has happened. How do you react? Okay, that's certainly part of it. But how do you plan to react, right? Being ready to react. But then there's another element of resiliency that I don't think agencies spend nearly enough and invest in, and that's how do I mitigate many of the bad things that could happen to me before they happen? And not just cybersecurity, but all kinds of things, bad things that can happen. And really thinking through that and using your governance function again and making that part of your planning function, right? That we're going to invest in new capabilities, of course, and service to the citizen, improving that. But we're also going to invest in being more resilient, okay? And obviously, it's specific to the agency, but we're going to invest in that, and we're going to meaningfully deal with that, and that's part and parcel of our planning exercise, and it's part and parcel of the key decisions that our governance bodies are going to make about how much to invest in resiliency versus how much to invest in new capabilities.
And when you talk about resiliency, you're going beyond like continuity of operations. You're kind of baking it in to the plan.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's not a sideline.
Not a sideline. No.
Yeah, that's my point. Is it's got to be integral for how the agency is run. Because again, the bad day will happen, and you want to really minimize what happens to you on that bad day, and then you want to be able to respond very effectively to that bad day.
The last part of the conversation I want to spend is around the transformation plan you outlined. And what advice, Richard, would you give an agency leader in developing a transformation plan as a blueprint, as you call it, for improving government performance?
Yeah. Well, just so people understand, that transformation plan is really built on the rest of the book, meaning, we talked about the attributes. So there's 8 solution functions, and we essentially went through those, like the people function and governance and program management, But then within those solution functions, I defined these attributes, right? And there's 68 of them, as it turns out, that I define throughout the book. So it's it seems daunting, right? But the transformation plan, a couple of points about it. One, the element of time. So I really focus in the book, and I talk about the fact that if you're coming in as a leader, let's say you're coming in as a political to run an agency or in a very key role in an agency, if you can stick around for 4 years, I really highly advise it, because not only do you want to drive real change, but then you want to institutionalize that change. And that's a theme in the book we haven't talked about yet, which is this notion that, agencies can revert. Even though it's goodness for them, they can revert. And so an improvement you make that is good for the agency, you want to make sure that it gets into the policy, and you want to make sure that it gets into the procedures on how things are done. And so that the next leader that comes in, he or she, that's the way the agency now runs, all right? Because I've seen agencies revert. And, and I go all the way back to when we started this discussion, why is it that agencies are still dealing with the exact same management challenges that they were 20 years later? Because they revert. Progress is made, but with such change at the top, right? It's not the goodness is not institutionalized. So I urge leaders coming in, if you can try to stay for 4 years so that you can make some real positive change, and then you can institutionalize that change so it becomes the way the agency now operates. That's how you can leave a legacy. So that's number one. Number two, if you're really near the top of the agency and you're driving change, and we talked about this, really work on that governance function, really work on that planning function, improve those, because that is real goodness that will last and will make a difference well beyond your tenure there. Okay, if you can if you can improve the planning and drive that planning down through so it really impacts what are the programs doing, okay, to really help the agency? What are those projects doing? How do you make decisions so that you're really investing your funds in the best way to really drive the change you want to see? Those are really, really goodness. And then a couple other points I would make. I talk in the book about setting up, and you can call it what you will, but two tiger teams, if you want to call them that, for lack of a better team. One, a program support organization, because I talked about the fact that many programs in government struggle. We just don't have the talent we need across these agencies to effectively run these programs. And so how do you deal with that? Well, get yourself some experts. And here you can buy some outside help too, okay? But a small team that is not about a compliance organization, but if a program needs help getting started, this is when you don't want them to go into the ditch within the first month or two of starting, right? You need to start well with the right people on board. Or if a program starts to run into problems, okay? A program support organization is there not to find fault. They'll look at the program and see where they need to shore it up. But the whole orientation is about helping the program to succeed, right? Very, very important. And so many things like the IGs and GAO, I hate to say it, they say they want to help, but it looks awfully negative when the reports come out, right? So I really want to turn on the positive here. Help the program get back to running effectively so it can deliver what it needs to deliver for the agency. And then on the operations side, I have this whole idea of this tiger team of experts, right, that know how to look at an operation, processes, systems, and how to improve those, both incrementally and then also some digital experts to help. How do you really digitally transform processes within government? And, if you can identify some of these, that then feeds back into the planning process, right? Right? Doesn't it? I mean, hey, we can digitally transform this process. And then let's feed this back in, get the right portfolio, looking at it. How are we going to do that? What program will it be done under, or do we need to establish a new program? And, so it's virtuous, okay? So, get this operations team, okay, this set of experts, and it doesn't need to be a lot of people, right? It really doesn't. That's what's the beauty of this. This program support organization, this operations improvement teams, they don't need to be large, okay? If they have, even a half a dozen people, maybe with a little contractor support for even the pretty large organization, large agencies, I've seen magic can happen. When I end the book that way, I have seen magic happen in government. And it is not rocket science here, but it is, but it is not simple either, right? I mean, 68 good attributes is not simple, and not that you have to have every one of them implemented, but you need the key things in place across these 8 functions, these 8 solutions I talk about, in order for this virtual cycle to happen, okay? And you need some time, okay? You need that 4 years time period to really make some difference.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Richard Spires, author of the new book, Government Can Deliver, a practitioner's guide to improving agency effectiveness and efficiency. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at iTunes, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast app, and as always at businessofgovernment.org.